Welcome back, YouTube, to Peterson Auto. Today we're going to do a video on seam sealer, how to apply it, a couple little tips and tricks, and some stuff I use. Now, none of this is going to be anything OE concourse correct. You can use acid brushes or other techniques to get that same finish, different ways to cut the tip. We'll also give you different OE finishes. Right now, I'm just giving you a rundown of how to apply it, how to put it on, some tips and tricks involved, and we're going to get started. So first thing is, you have your tube of seam sealer in your caulking gun. Cut off the tip and puncture the seal like you would with any other caulk setup. Squeeze it a few times, builds up pressure and starts to come out. So after that, you're ready to start applying. Okay, now we're back. We're going to start applying seam sealer to the vehicle. You can see through here I've welded on seat reinforcement brackets. These brackets are right up against the body sheet metal. So in this case, I want to put some seam sealer here. You want to have a nice, clean, dry surface. As you can see, I've put a weld-through primer on the brackets and over all the welds. Pardon the poor quality of the welds. I was working with a 110 flux core. However, they are strong. It's not coming off, and I don't have to worry about that. All it is just to hold the nuts in place and make it sure everything's going to be, stationary there. A little reinforcement, but these weren't welded before. They were just pinched in, so this will function fine. Take your caulking gun with your seam sealer, squeeze the trigger, and start filling any voids you may have between two pieces of metal. Now this part isn't too much of an issue because it's fairly much just filling a hole, but you want to try to spread it out. You want to cover any gaps or imperfections there may or may not be there. It's always better to add more than you need and smooth it out, or even remove some later than not have enough. So feel free to be generous. You can see when I go up over a weld or any other body imperfection, I go ahead and add just a little bit more there. We're trying to get a nice bead just for, really, there's no reason behind it, but, try to make it look decent here. And we're just trying to seal this up, so, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. A little bit over that weld. Fill in that hole. And there's one line. We're going to come back up and we're going to put a little more around each of the welds. And just to seal anything out of the welds for these nuts, we're actually going to coat them too. Seam sealer is used to pretty much keep any water, moisture, or anything else out of two pieces of metal jointed together, be it bi-weld. So you can use it for when you're patching sheet metal together. You usually wind up with fairly porous welds, especially when you're using a little 110 flux core machine. They're going to be strong, they're going to function, but they're going to be fairly porous. So you can use seam sealer to cover them up and to make everything waterproof and watertight so you don't have rust in the future. Now, I'm going to get this whole bracket done before we go ahead and smooth things out. But a couple other seam sealer tricks there is many OE installations use some kind of seam sealer at one point as a sound deadening material. So you can go ahead and you can smooth it out and use it as sound deadening. It's great to put in any joints. Most OE applications, again, will have it in many joints, but you want a little more sound deadening in the project, you can always add some extra in, and that'll help reinforce and eliminate any noises transferring through those particular joints. So once we get this done here in a minute, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab something to smooth things out. When you're smoothing things out, there's a couple ways to go. However, what I found out works pretty well is gonna be a little piece of metal. So right here I just have this little piece of metal. you know, handle, size, shape, smooth edge. There's a little lip from the cutoff wheel. Doesn't have to be fancy. You just take that and smooth it out a little bit where you have a high spot or get some build up there. Get it nice and smooth. So this whole edge is a little on the high side. It's going to drag the metal up it and get it smoothed out. Seam sealer, again, apply a little more than you need. Shouldn't have any issues. If you don't apply enough, you can always go back over it, but once you get the vehicle together, that becomes kind of annoying. The other thing you want to remember, though, is seam sealer can trap water. You can build little pockets in it that will go ahead and hold moisture and hold water. So I'm feathering the edges a little bit here. That's going to smooth everything out, make it look a little bit better. And it's going to keep any moisture from laying in any pockets you may create in the seam sealer process. Here I have a little gap. I'm just pulling it up again to fill it in. I'll probably put another pass on that particular area. But you can easily see how well it smooths out and how well it spreads. And that's going to be the basic process behind it. Just put it on, smooth it out, put it on, smooth it out. A little much. You can gather it up, transfer it to another area where you might need a little more, and get pretty good coverage without much work with a little piece of metal. And also use a plastic scraper, rubber scraper. Don't use your wife or mother's spatulas. They will get mad at you. But any plastic or rubber scrapers, or in this case the piece of metal, seems to work very well. You want a more OE finish to it. Take an acid brush then, after you've smoothed it out, and go over it one more time. It'll give a rougher texture to it like the OE used. Again, this isn't supposed to be perfect, so, you know, as long as it seals things up, keeps any moisture out of my welds, moisture out of my joints, this will be completely fine. Okay, and here's the final finish. You can see I brushed it some. There's a little hole I might want to go over. Always lick your finger and smush it into place if you want to. But this is the final brushed finish that you use to duplicate OEM. I did a horrible job at this, but that being said, I just wanted to smooth it out some. But you take an acid brush and you run acid brush gently over it, and it's going to give you a similar finish to this. You can see, done a lot of the other side. The big gooped on area there is because there were a lot of spot welds. I decided to just cover everything. That way, there's no places for moisture to get trapped. So, little tip for you there. Make sure you got everything covered. Better to use too much than not enough. This stuff goes a long way. When you open a tube, keep that tube open, because if you don't, the tube will dry out, and now that tube is useless. Sorry. Now the tube is useless. So make sure you, once you open the tube, you keep it open, you run it out, and you're good. So here's two little spots we did, and you can see we put some rubberized undercoating over them. It's still drying, but you can get an idea what it looks like after it's covered with rubberized undercoating. You really can't tell much of a difference. Now right there And down here are some beads that have not been finished, were previously done and cured. So just to give you an idea what those will look like as you just put it on and cover up. Those I'll probably go over one more time with one more coat, just to make sure everything's smooth and looks a little bit decent, a little bit more decent under there, gets any pinholes. But you can see a general idea of what it looks like once it's covered with an undercoating. You really can't tell much of a difference on it. Here's the bracket we did earlier. Again, covered with the undercoating, and this one was not smoothed out other than with a piece of metal. It'll function, it'll work. It's just to keep water out and to keep rust from happening where two panels join together. Probably be doing down here around the seat belts. Seatbelt mounts, I'll probably do a good coating there. And I have a couple other coatings in different areas. But there's a good how-to for you. You can see a general look over. Get an idea what everything looks like there. So thank you for tuning into the Dolly project, and we'll get more updates on this as we go. Hopefully we can get this cab painted and maybe do a video on that soon. And you know, I have that in the works, but I'm not doing the painting. I have a buddy doing it, so we'll see how that goes. All right, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and keep an eye out for the next video.